Synth Network.
And a very good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you might be in the world. It is just gone 7 p.m. here in the UK. I hope for all our American friends we haven't confused you too much, but you guys, you will insist on moving ahead to summertime, which I have no problem with because I can't wait to get there myself. But we here go like everybody else. We don't go until like next weekend. So hopefully this isn't too awkward. It hasn't made your viewing habits any more difficult than they normally are. But welcome to episode 50. It's almost 1 year since we've been doing this, and we've got an absolutely brilliant guest to celebrate our 50th episode. I'm joined as always by my partners in crime, Ben Simpson and Cryss Synthient, but today we're also joined by the wonderful, the delightful, the delectable Dina Pearlman. Welcome to everyone.
Hi, how you doing?
Hi Dina, how are you?
My pleasure. It's very good, considering I just, as you call them, got a jab yesterday.
Yes. How are you feeling? You good? Yeah?
My arm's a bit sore, but nothing terrible.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I'm surprisingly well.
Good. No, that's good. That's good to hear. My wife got hers same time, I think, yesterday, and she's got like a bit of pain just underneath her arm where it was. But, you know, other than that, you know, it's fingers crossed she'll be through that in 24 hours or so. But she's protected, and it's great to hear that you've got that as well, so that's good. Let's go across to, or should I say up in my case, to the north of England. Mr. Ben Simpson in his little boudoir studio there in Warrington, or near Warrington. How are you?
I'm good. I also had a jab earlier in the week.
Oh, excellent.
And forgot all about it. And I was going up some stairs, and I was getting tired, my legs were aching, I was out of breath, and I was thinking, I've really got to work on my fitness. And then remembered that I'd had the jab the night before, and it was the side effects of that. That's
yeah,
all
blame your age on a jab.
I do actually need to improve the fitness.
Well, in that case, I'm suffering from the side effects of the jab for the last 10 years, I think. Never mind. Cryss, in California, how are you?
I'm doing well.
Good.
It's been a fun week over here. As people can see in the background, I have a friend that's a neighbor, and he has told me for years, because he mostly spends his time playing guitar these days, and he said, "Oh, I've got the synthesizer in the garage." Like, what kind of synthesizer do you have? After he found out I was into synthesizers, and he's like, "Yeah, it's an ARC 2600. What?
Just like everyone's got one of those sitting in the back of the garage.
Yeah, I mean, so I begged him this week that I could borrow it and have it on display for when we had Dina on, and he graciously agreed. It hasn't been fired up in quite a while, so I've been very slow about it and taking things apart, looking at it. And this particular one is a 1974 2600 P version 3. It's got the 24 decibel filter, and it's got the more stable oscillators. And I'm really hoping that everything will be working. I think I might have to fix the keyboard. And so I'm going to have a look at that here in the next few days. But it was pretty amazing. He just to tell you real briefly about this guy, so he would be considered one of the early synthesists, and he had been going to like the NAMM show, and he said he had gone to a hotel for several years where ARP was showing their synthesizers, and I guess it would have been in early '74 probably that he bought this 2600, and then he had been a demonstrator at the music store he worked at, as well as doing films and commercials, jingles. Also taught synthesis at a college locally, and a lot of really interesting stuff. I want to talk to him more. We've talked so much about guitars over the years, but I'm really excited to talk to him about his history in synthesizers. And then he dug out of the garage. He said he had more stuff, but amongst the things that he had that he lent to me, you guys can see there, that's the original manual for this 2600. And then he also had this, which is a manual for 2500. And you can see in here.
Look at that. Look at that. Does it smell like good? Has it got that kind of old book smell?
It smells like old man in my room right now.
Okay.
Not from him, but from old electronics.
Yeah. Oh, it's the best smell ever. It's the best smell ever. What a fascinating name. Why can we not all have neighbours like that? I certainly don't. As I said, we were talking before we came on out. I said my neighbours just has chickens and ducks, unless he's keeping something hidden in his basement. And knowing my neighbour, it's probably an old enemy that he's got hidden under there, rather than a synthesizer. Dina, you have a fantastic collection behind you there. What have you got there?
I have. We could start with the oldest. I don't know if you could. Let's see if we can do this. Sure, we can.
Oh, look at this dynamic camera.
All right. So you probably can't see, but next to there's a guitar, and underneath there's an old anvil case. That's my father's Pro Soloist. It really needs some love. Mm-hmm. The case on top is empty, but it has the Explorer, which is right next to it. So that was my dad's Explorer as well. There's a Korg Odyssey. There is an ARP Axe, which is almost directly behind me. Mm-hmm. Yeah. There you go.
Yes, there is.
All right. The axe was a donation because I'll be telling you all about the program later, but we do have a program coming up. There's an avatar in a crate on the floor, which you can't see. There's my father's Minus noise mixer. Mm-hmm. And then there is a Korg 2600 behind me.
Very nice.
We have a lot of fun stuff.
Yeah, and some great pictures on the walls too, I can see. So
I'm blessed. People send me things sometimes. There's a Joe Zawinul poster. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah, which was always one of those iconic images that from my childhood, which is now blessing my walls, which is really great.
Excellent. That's fantastic. I love spaces like that with history and, like you say, old technology smell. I love that smell.
There is a smell, and it brings me back to my childhood. It's very odd.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about that later as well. So the format for today's show, everyone, is obviously we're going to be spending a lot of time talking with Dina and just getting some stories and asking her thoughts. But we've also got a few news items to mention. It has been a fairly quiet week, so we'll bring those up later in the show. If you have any questions that you would like us to put to Dina, then please do say so in the chat room. Make sure that you tag us at Synth Network in the comments section, and then just put your question in there, and we'll all try and keep an eye on that and try and put those to Dina throughout the show. And of course, we'll just get all the kind of this kind of stuff out of the way. So if you want to engage with us on social media, we have our Twitter account. We have our Instagram account, and of course the Facebook page, all of which are at Synth Network. And of course, most of you are watching on YouTube, you already know how to find us there. We would always love your donations, however small, however large, and thank you to everyone that has donated so far. We've got a nice little healthy bank balance for us to carry on providing this show to you guys every week, for some while yet. So you're stuck with us, and it's all your fault. If you want to donate, there's the address. It's also in the bottom in the description of the video, Cutley/PSN-donate. So please, if you feel so inclined, no matter how small your donation, it is gratefully received. Thank you very much. Let us remove all of these little name badges at the bottom of the screen because they take up a lot of space. We all know who we are now. Let's get rid of those. And welcome to all of our viewers on Facebook, live on YouTube, and of course we are broadcasting live on Twitter as well. The technology is fantastic. So let's have a look. Let's say hello to a few people in the chat room, why don't we? We've got our usuals. We've got Wagyu and Synth Addict, Martin Taylor, Yanacetta, Inky's in there, Paul Talbot, Atto Z, Andrew Brooks is with us, Synthient Sound, that's obviously Cryss, Simon, who will be on next week, I believe, Simon Alexander, he's in the chat room, welcome sir. Gethsemane Music, which is Brian Oliva. We got, I think we've mentioned Wagyu. Yeah, there's just Dr. Manny Fernandez is in the house. Everyone, 12 Up, welcome, sir. I've just been watching your videos this afternoon. If you are like me, a bit of a fan of FM synthesis, so is 12 Up, and he has a great video channel where he demonstrates some of the greatest patches of the kind of the FM era. There you go. That's another one you can tick off your bingo lists. And there's just loads of other people in there. We won't go into. You'll know who you are. Welcome. You are all incredibly welcome. So let's crack on, shall we? First of all, let's. I just want to ask you, Dina. You're here in your role as are you the founder? You are the founder, I guess, of the Alan R. Pearlman Foundation and the Archive. What really interests me is why start this? What was your motivation for starting this foundation in memory of your father?
The best thing I could say is it happened organically. It was not pre-planned, but it sort of evolved as I saw the need for it to happen. It started actually the day after he passed, because I had posted on Facebook that my father had passed away, and I posted it a little bit past midnight on the day that he passed, on the 5th. It was into the 6th, and I woke up later to find hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of comments, and someone is telling me that it's being shared all over the world, and I was taken aback. I didn't quite know how to handle it. But of course, at the time, I was involved in what people are involved in when their father passes. So I was very focused on my mother and the family and trying to make arrangements. When it became evident not too long after the service for my father, which was attended by a lot of people who I didn't know at the time, but I know now, and a lot of old faces from the ARP days, that there was a need to fill in a lot of gaps of information. My father was not as well known as some other synth manufacturers, and because of that, there was not a lot of information other than some business articles and things like that. And I'm being solicited by New York Times and other people to be interviewed and to show, pictures and give information about his ARP days, which of course I was very young when it all started. Mm-hmm. So I started to try to amass some information and tried to hunt for some photos. This took me on a worldwide search. The photo that most people see now with him sort of draped on the 2600.
Yeah.
I was not able to trace locally. Somebody in Sweden actually told me where they found it. Then it came back to be local, and so it was a big journey. Meanwhile, I'm getting information from other art people. So it just sort of amalgamated into this, first trying to amass some information. Then I had to politely take back the fast Facebook fan page that someone had made but never did anything with. Right. And I said, "You're not Alan Pearlman. I know that So it's like that. And so I got the Facebook page, and I said, just to keep things sane, I want to bring things here. And this was also coupled with a growing friendship with Michelle Moog. Michelle came to the funeral. We had met over a project sort of in the cyber world a few years previous. My father had already been sick by then and wasn't able to do a lot. So I started helping her a little bit with the project. And so we had been email friends. And then she showed up at the funeral and said, I'm probably the only person who understands what you're going through right now.
Yeah.
And it turned out we had a lot in common. And she's encouraged and opened doors for me and really helped me out a lot. So there was another branch of the tree that has become the foundation.
Yeah, yeah. Because I mean, we've spoken to Michelle on the show, and I've spoken to you personally and Michelle personally, and the similarities between your experiences. Your journeys are quite different, but your experiences from the moment of your terrible loss have been so similar, and it does seem that you guys you look out for each other, and that's really cool. And you're two very important people in your own right, but you share this kind of common trait, I guess, of having a famous father in the same industry. Does that weigh heavily on you, that kind of pressure, or how does that feel sometimes?
It did when I was younger, which is why a lot of people during my lifetime have said, I didn't know your father did this and all. And, the answer was, well, it ceased becoming part of our family life for many years. When I was very young, I really enjoyed it. And then when I got older, I found a lot of people wanted to know me only because of who my father was.
Right.
And like many young people that are seeking out their own identity, I would refrain from telling people sometimes.
Right.
There's some funny stories. I don't know if there's a Bill Miller in the audience. He has a funny story that I can recount. Basically, I was in a recording studio with a band that I was playing with in the early 80s. And I sort of reluctantly admitted to who my father was as he pointed to an Odyssey on the wall. Years later, I was really blessed to meet him at a symposium in 2015. He said, "Do you remember me?" I said, "Of course I remember you."
That must be really difficult to kind of resist the temptation sometimes with certain people in certain situations where they may be talking about your father's work or your father's notoriety or his standing in the community, and you just got to say, "Yeah, that's my dad. Yeah, that's my dad." Because I know I would. Not that my father was famous in any way, shape, or form. So you started the foundation. What are the foundation's main aims? What are you trying to do with it?
Initially, the idea was to house the artifacts and the materials. I have my own set of manuals and this and that, and my father's vast files. And the other was to create a scholarship with the idea of preserving his memory through his name and story. My father was extremely education forward. This is what he loved more than anything. He was passionate about passing it on to the next generation. So again, going back to after he passed away, people said, is there an organization we can make a donation to? And I was thinking, oh my goodness, it's too bad we don't have a foundation in his name. Because I would love to have an Alan Perlman scholarship for an engineering student or electronic music student. So that became an impetus to the actual idea of a foundation per se. But I realized that I really want to preserve his name. I want his legacy to be told. And I want his idea of inspiring emerging musicians. I don't want to say necessarily young, but I want to say emerging. It could be someone who just discovered synthesizers at age 70. It doesn't matter. Yeah. Someone who is inspired to be able to get these tools to use. So to bring that forward, to preserve his legacy and to inspire the future musicians, future engineers.
And what about in terms of the actual archive? Because there's clearly you've got pieces of your father's equipment that you showed us, but also there must be documentation, photographs, all that kind of stuff. What are your plans, for that, and what do you do with it?
Yeah, well, everything got stopped because of COVID. There was a lot of plans underway. The digital archives are an ongoing process where we're scanning all the materials that we can. And we were gifted a big data storage repository
Oh, that's
as a donation. Yeah, so that's really wonderful. And that is going to house, as much digital material and as high resolution and as extensive as need be. For the physical archives, there's a couple of things that are going to happen. First of all, we have a project which we're announcing, and I keep saying this, we're going to announce it any minute, and it's true. A lot of it is being held up because I'm the only one really working on a lot of, I shouldn't say that. I have a lot of projects that have been on the back burner that I'm trying to bring to fruition before I come forward with this particular project. But we are partnered with a wonderful not-for-profit recording studio in Boston.
Okay.
And we will soon be making the official announcement, but we're going to be housing a collection of instruments there. And this is going to be called a living collection. We're calling it ARPS for All. And it is hopefully going to be just what it sounds like, meaning that we will have instruments that are there for use and not solely for posterity or to be observed. They're there for use as well. And we are going to be having workshops there, seminars. Hopefully people will be able to write a grant to come and do a recording project. And in the grant aspect, that would be a project where the artist would be funded. We also hope to have artist in residencies where we're partnering an experienced artist to come and work with a less experienced artist.
That's cool.
Yeah. And of course, anyone can come in and use the studio for a fee, but the fee is unusually affordable because of the not-for-profit nature. So even when it comes down to people having to pay, the money's going to go back into the not-for-profit. So it's all gonna work together.
And are you doing this in the Boston area?
We're going to do it in the Boston area. ARPS for All, we eventually imagine seeing ARPS for All as a global project where we will partner with certain other studios that have similar collections and similar ambitions of doing it for the love of education and not solely for profit, where we could maybe have an exchange program or have someone's in, Europe or Latin America or Asia or wherever the synthesizers are being held to come in and do a project, and we would sponsor that as a residency. So that's the big global picture. Right now we're going to focus on Boston because the idea is that the instruments are coming home. ARP was founded in the Boston area, and I think that's an appropriate place for the first collection to be.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Definitely, yeah.
As far as the, some of the physical artifacts, we have had some discussions with Berklee College of Music, and after the pandemic is at a place where we can all meet in a room and people feel secure in the futures of their different organizations, that it will be a lot more feasible to have that type of discussion. But right now, they're sort of spread between myself, a few other board members, the stuff. So we're kind of
But when you say the exhibits are going to be there to be used and played, what kind of instruments have you got in mind there? Is it going to be? It's going to be a 2500 that I can have a go of. That's what I'm trying.
Well, we would love a 2500. I'm sure all you users out there are very happy to donate yours.
Yeah, I have got one. It's
in his garage. Yeah, like
it is my garage. It is the garage. That's it.
So we have a pretty decent selection of instruments that were have been either promised to us for donation or that we're in process of negotiating.
Right. Okay.
And my father's, of course, too. So we have donations of 2,600 or to a few Odysseys, the Axe and the Avatar, which are here with me now, but are going to be being driven to Boston. The Explorer, my father's Explorer. I hope to get the Pro Soloist fixed.
Okay.
in decent time this year anyway, and have that join the collection as well. We have a Quadra that has been promised to us, and very excited about that.
Yeah.
And an Omni that's also been
Oh, yeah.
promised to us.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, we are looking avidly for, of course, that elusive 2500 in the sky.
Well, you never know. Stranger things have happened.
And I realize that with the rarity of such an instrument that we're probably looking at maybe, someone would want a loan for a while, which happens in museum situations. This is a very safe environment, climate controlled, security and all that stuff too. So like a museum or a collector would loan to another museum or to another collection,
Yeah.
that would be a possibility as well to, have on loan for a certain amount of time, 2500 or working chroma or something like that are instruments that are more rare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if anybody in the audience
yeah.
knows of any of these things, we'll happily put you in touch.
I was going to ask about the chroma, actually. So you would have a chroma there. It's a Rhodes chroma, isn't it? But I do, I obviously know where it came from.
Right.
Yeah.
I do visualize that there's going to be other synthesizers is interfacing with the ARPs as well.
Yeah.
I do not, as much as I want it to be ARP centric.
Yeah.
But I don't. I'm not going to say no to other donations of instruments that play nice with ARPs.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I think a chroma should be there, definitely. That
It has the DNA, doesn't it?
Yeah,
it does.
definitely.
It does. Well, there's that sort of those eminent Salinas. Things that are kind of in that that gray area as well.
Yeah.
But I loved seeing people interface. When Lisa Belladonna, for instance, plays Moogs with ARPs. And it's such a lovely connection that that if that is in people's journey to see how one synthesizer can interface with another, I think that's equally important. I don't believe in the Pepsi Coca-Cola world.
Yeah. So if anybody wants to find out more about the Alan R. Pearlman Foundation, then it is simply alanrpearlmanfoundation.org, and the website will tell you all about ARP, the foundation, its projects, events, the archives. There's a blog there, and you can sign up and donate as well. All sorts of fantastic. Oh, look, there you go. We're even there. We're on the front page. Yay. So yeah, and then of course there's your participation in the Music Makers and Machines Google Arts, which is fantastic. Some great pictures there from your Instagram pages, so you can sign up for a newsletter. Everything is there. alanrpearlmanfoundation.org. One of the questions, before I hand over to one of the other guys, one of the questions I saw in the chat room is apparently, and I'm not aware of this, but apparently there is some debate as to what the R stands for in Alan R. Pearlman. Would you be able to clear that up for us once and for all?
Sure, Robert.
It is Robert. What a great name. What a great name. No, I share something. You see, actually, it's funny that because you've got Robert Moog and you've got Alan Robert Pearlman. There's something. Do you think there's something there? I don't know.
It gets more interesting than that.
It does? Ooh, tell me.
If any of the people out there believe in astrology, Michelle and I are born with just a few days apart.
Oh, wow.
And so it's my father and Bob. Bob was at the end of May. My dad was at the beginning of June. So
there's something spooky going on there.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Well, the name Robert is a combination of, I think, Germanic origin, Roth and Bert, which would be like something akin to Shining Glory, and I couldn't think of a better name for men like Bob,
Well,
Alan R. Pearlman and Bob Moog, and that other guy that we know too.
Yeah.
What's his name? The film composer Piricelli? Robert.
That's the one. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fun. Do you know my full name is Roberto because I'm Italian, and so it's funny how many times I'm asked, how do you spell that? It's Robert with an O. I mean, come on, how hard can it be?
Bob Familiar's saying there is absolutely something to it.
Yeah, absolutely, Bob. There's a meme going around that says, people that are called Robert, okay, they are Robbie when they're kids, then they become Robert when they're adults, and then they become Rob when they're kind of a little bit older, and then they become Bob as they kind of towards the end of their life. I've gone the other way. I've gone back to Robbie because that's what like all my family called me. And going on social media and stuff, it was just the obvious thing to do so that people knew who I was. Not that my surname doesn't really distinguish me anyway. Anyway, that's enough about that. Guys, you've got some questions. Who wants to go first? Don't fight.
Yeah. Well,
Sorry.
let's dive in a little bit to and talk. Continue the discussion about your father. Of course, in situations like these, like I said before, like we're the outsiders, we're the admirers, and Dina, you've known the inventor, but you've known him as a father, and just like real generally, because we would like to know what your father was like, because if it was just the things that he created that mattered, we would just write books about things. But the fact that his name is so well known and that he is such an iconic figure, what can you tell us about your father as a person?
Well, back to the names thing, he was called Al a lot in the industry, so everybody knew him as Al Pearlman. I don't know.
I was going to ask that.
Yeah, the art thing. It came out of college, and also I think when he was in Nexus, when he was making op amps, that they called him ARP there. So my dad was one of the kindest people I've ever met in life. As a matter of fact, I remember when we would go to Europe that in a lot of European cities at the time, there would be people asking for money on the streets. He would have to stop and talk to everybody and give them something. My mom, who was brought up in Europe and lived in Europe until the end of the war, you used to have to sort of drag him away after a while. So he was just generous to a fault. He loved to speak to people. He took a genuine interest in the people that he met. He would look you in the eye. He would ask questions. He would give you his full attention. He also, he called himself the original nerd. If you go to the Google project, actually, and there's a piece about his life. There's a little animation in the beginning that Mary Locke, who is in our foundation and worked for ARP for many years, made. But she took it from a drawing that he made of himself, and it discusses his initiation into electricity. He was taking apart a radio. He got a shock. He realized how powerful electricity was.
Should we play that animation?
Oh yeah. It's so lovely. It's
Let's
so
do this.
cute.
There we go. That was cute.
Sounded great, that didn't
Yeah.
Yeah.
that low sound that came in, the way it was phasing, and it just sounded awesome.
Yeah.
So he made those drawings, and he made the labels that go with them. The taking to music and animation was Mary, so you can kind of get an idea. He had a sense of humor.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I just, before I mentioned, there was someone in the chat. I just discovered the chat, and
Okay.
I actually have T-shirts of the old Tonus logo, but we can go back to that
Okay.
later. Before I forget, it goes off into the ether. So my dad also, he loved to help people, and just a real generous spirit. There's stories where he's given people synthesizers to use for months and months, and equipment, just because he wanted to nurture their creative spirit. And like that, it wasn't for any thought of endorsement or anything. It was really, people, everyday people, not necessarily artists. Yeah. He was very, very focused on his work, but at the same point, there was not a moment that I ever felt ignored or by his work. He kind of brought me into his work in a way. So if I asked a question, he would show me. And I remember him showing me an oscilloscope and how I was just completely enthralled with this thing that could make these shapes, and it was in our basement. So it was really cool. He also spoke with his hands a lot. He loved to gesticulate. I used to laugh and say, it's funny because my mom lived in Italy, but my dad was the one who was very, and just warm and emotional, speaking with his hands a lot. So he would get genuinely excited, and he's like, oh, he would make these expressions, and so there's nothing but great memories I have like that. Everyone who knew him just thought he was the kindest soul.
Yeah. So, what was his experience with music? As obviously, you've talked about his work with electronics, and what really got him into thinking about synthesizers and creating in that area?
So my father had this couple of passions. One was electronics. He loved to take things apart, put them back together, figure out a better way to put them. And this started, from that time when he was, I think, 4 years old, when he took apart the radio. And the other was he took piano lessons when he was a child, and he took classical piano. And he likes to joke that he had a crush on his piano teacher. That's kept him interested. Hold on a second. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So he loved classical music. And this kind of set him apart from a lot of his peers. His brother was into more like the popular music, and most of his peers were. So he was, already kind of set apart in his own world with classical. And we grew up with, we had two Steinways, an upright and a baby grand. The baby grand is I have now. Whoops. And he would always play very, very complex pieces. I just was listening. I went to listen to that soundtrack from the Beethoven movie, Immortal Beloved, and I remember him playing some of those piano sonatas. So he was very accomplished, I thought. His two loves were music and electronics, and this was what he decided to focus on in college. He wrote a paper in 1948 for what is now IEEE, but at the time was the American Institute of Electronic Engineers, about how, this is sort of a famous line, you can go back to the website and read it a little bit, about how the synthesizer right now is being thought of as a novelty, but that the time is not so far where it'll be thought of as a true instrument. Yeah. And I'm probably paraphrasing terribly, but so, this was something he was interested in. And when he heard Wendy Carlos, that was his tipping point. Up to that, he also was interested in Mort Subotnick. He knew Leon Kircher, and went to see Buchlas and at Harvard, and had a fascination with a lot of the electronic music. His range of interest in classical music was very broad. His range in other music, not so broad. But classical between contemporary and the old masters.
So I'm kind of curious. Some of my other favorite musical instrument inventors sometimes were not musicians, or they play different instruments. Leo Fender didn't play guitar. Jim Marshall was a drummer, not a guitarist.
Right.
Also, so when your father would sit and play synthesizers, what did it sound like when he himself was hitting the keys on there? Was it more things like we would hear from Wendy Carlos and classically inspired things, or what did he doodle around on while he played his own synthesizers?
He would doodle around on classical. He would he would play classical. He would also sometimes some kind of pop tune, which is interesting. Is sort of what he came back around to at the end of his life. He wasn't able to play with his left hand, but he was playing pop tunes with his right hand.
Mm-hmm.
So it was quite a smattering of different stuff, but most of it was classical. Absolutely, he just sort of a Bach invention or something like that.
That must have been fantastic to sit and listen to. A little bit about his design philosophy. If there's anything that you could speak to that. One thing in particular that I'm thinking about is, whereas say a lot of synthesizers, say my Moog here, a lot of knob-driven functions on it. Your father chose sliders as a design element, as we see behind me here. And also, as far as on a lot of his synthesizers, the color coding has always interested me. Is there anything you can say to that? Is that part of like the way he did things? Was it on purpose, or is it just something he liked for style?
Oh, it was absolutely on purpose. This is something that I came to realize really late in life. But he was really into color coding as a way of discerning between either different functions or things that had similar, looked the same, but were separate. In his studio, or I should say his office later on in life, everything was color coded. There would be, he would buy this, really, really hot colored electrical tape, and an input for a peripheral and output for a computer peripheral. One would be green, the other would be red, or yellow, or some kind of bright color, so he could know which one was supposed to go in where, and there would be colored dots everywhere. And he also had put things with Velcro up on the walls so they were within reach. So everything was sort of ergonomic.
Love that. Yeah.
He was a short man. My family, we're all very diminutive in height anyway. So he was very conscious about how one reaches for things, how one is able to function in a very efficient manner. And he did this everywhere, in his workbench, in the bathroom, where the cups, everything was reachable, everything was figured out. And since I saw how he was in his everyday life, it suddenly clicked that this is why you have the slider covers on some of the, like the Whiteface Odyssey or the 2500, or different things like that, or the Quadra with the 4 color, that this was a way to help musicians see things quickly. All those lines, those directional lines, to see things quickly. Sliders, you can tell if it's, if you've opened up the filter all the way or not. It's a way of being able to see quickly. So I absolutely think that all of the designs were, the interface designs were done with purpose and not with style in mind, so to speak, not fashionable.
Yeah, I think it ends up being fashionable. I like the look of the multicolored, slider tips, but definitely the functionality of it, I thought was very clever. I know there are a lot of people that feel the same way as well.
Yeah. Well, Dina and I were talking a few days ago, and this topic came up, and we did this show on Sunday about the Kodemo Essence FM. And one of the things that I really love about it is this color coding, and it just kind of it clicked. There you go, it does work, and it really does help
Right,
you navigate what could be a complex
I'm a
array
firm
of switches.
believer in the color coding system. Everything in here is color coded. I'm obsessed with it. To
Except
the point,
your clothes. Yeah.
to the point, to the point where the band members in my band are even color coded.
This is true.
Named accordingly. We have green, we have red, and we have gold, and it's all to help with the wiring and the. We can literally go that far.
But it's true, and it's even if you watch like a football game, and like you've got the pundits that are gathered around the edge of the pitch, and they're giving the halftime, kind of rundown, whether it's American football or soccer or anything. You look, they're all holding handheld mics, and on the bottoms of the mic is just a flash of colour, and because it just helps locate things, so much easier than words or letters and things. So
especially like with the Odyssey, using the Odyssey as an example, like it's actually like quite a different layout from other synthesizers. It's not like the Mini Moog at all. Nearly said Moog then, sorry. It's not like the Mini Moog at all. But where it does help is those coloured caps, like you're saying. You've got like a section over here that's red, and you've got a section over here that's red, and you just link those two things. It's so simple. It's genius. It's that simple. It is genius. Yeah. Really impressed with that.
Yeah, it is interesting to if you've just to kind of think about the creative process, like you're thinking about the sound of it, but then also to have that mindset of like, oh yeah, but we're also touching this thing and looking for things, and
That's great.
Tell us, you talked a bit about how your dad was with people, and even just people he would meet on the street, like to have conversations with him, and it sounds like a very personable man. You've also said that he was mainly into classical music. So what was the relationship like with all these different artists, like not just synthesizer artists, but some of the best known ARP users have been rock guitarists, and what was his relationship with that side of music?
It's interesting. He bought many of the albums of the, I call them in my head the pioneers. Stevie Wonder was one of the first well-known ARP users. Billy Preston, Pete Townsend, Herbie Hancock, and all those albums were in the house, and I would listen to them, and I didn't hear anything derogatory. There was no judgment. He thought it was okay. It was okay, but not his thing. Sort of like he likes ice cream, but he likes chocolate, not vanilla. This kind of, But he thought that first. It's interesting. He bought my Beatles albums, all the Beatles albums that I had. He bought me a lot of popular music. He thought it was important to see what was going on, and I didn't always realize that some of the albums also were albums that had ARPs on them at the time. So that was an interesting revelation that came along later. So he was open to it. He just wasn't into it. And there's a lot of funny stories behind it. Like the time, my mom said, "Oh yeah, we met one of the Beatles." I'm like, "What do you mean one of the Beatles? Can you tell me which Beatle this was?" Well, I don't remember. He was a very nice young man, and he shook my hand. I'm like, and then there's the famous Pete Townsend story. You must have heard this a million times, right?
Oh, but we need to hear it.
Yeah, we need to hear it from you.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. So in the after they met one of the Beatles, and then also one of the co-workers' daughters was bragging about an autograph album that she had. I think I was maybe 14 or 15 at this point. I said, "What, you didn't get me an autograph?" 15-year-old girls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I did my 15-year-old girl pout, and so he could not come back next time he went to Europe empty-handed. and he came back with it's an EP. I should have brought it down with me anyway. It's an EP Boris the Spider, and I'm a boy. One on either side. It was a promo, Polydor promo with an autograph by Pete. I was so excited. I was like, well, what was he like? And my dad said, oh, I don't know. I gave one of the salespeople went and got the autograph for me.
Meanwhile, the salesperson has had the best day of their life.
So, the really cool thing is I kept that, that's always been a prized possession of mine. And when my father passed, after sort of the initial uproar around the passing died down, I went and tried to reach out to the pioneers. And I got contacted by Pete Townsend's personal assistant. And long story short, I got to meet him later that year.
Cool.
Yeah, it was very cool. And we had some great conversation. He was really personable, really open and happy to talk and interested that I was going to start this foundation and had this. And I had brought this little brochure. I wanted to bring something that wouldn't be a hindrance at a concert, but that I could, if the opportunity was right, I could tell him the story about my father. And so he signed something a second time. We're 45 years later kind of thing. His signatures remain the same.
Yeah, I think he's one of those iconic figures of art history, and in the circles that we're running, we talk a lot about keyboardists that become synthesis, but obviously I'm very fascinated by guitarists that become synthesis, and some of his work, and then those pictures that you can find online where Pete's sitting there with I believe it was a 2500, are just fantastic. I don't know if you would know or not, but part of the other side of this is that especially the 2600 was used a lot in TV and film, and through talking to people, I mean, why that one in particular, or how did that, like Star Wars or Close Encounters? Is there anything that you know about why that was used?
Why the 2500 of all machines?
Or the 2600, or just our synthesizers seem to be, especially in American film and TV,
the electronic presence in film.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure about the why it was used in Close Encounters. There's some interesting stories. You can actually, we put them in the Music Makers Google project. You can see. I think because it had a lot of visible presence, in that case, they wanted to have a huge console because they were speaking to the aliens with it.
Yeah.
My dad loved science fiction, by the way.
Oh, cool. What did he think? What did he think? I mean, what did he think when the 2500 was in Close Encounters and the R2D2, was a 2600? Was he aware? Did he feel kind of proud of that? Or?
Oh, yes, he was always proud.
Yeah.
He was proud, but he was not a bragger. So I didn't know about R2D2 until probably 2 years ago.
Oh, wow.
That's true.
Yeah.
Ben Burke gets credit for creating the R2D2 sound, doesn't he? But it's Alan R. Pearlman as well, isn't it? It's a joint project, really.
Yeah.
When we went, when Close Encounters came out, however, we went as a family, and of course I knew Phil Dodds. He came over to the house all the time for dinner or whatever, and it was like, oh my God, there's someone I know on the TV, on the screen. It's really exciting. So he was proud, and there was some a little bit of annoyance because they kept Phil for so long, and they kept the instrument for so long, and there's a bunch of legend about the instrument not coming back in such great shape or things like that. So there was always a flip side to everything, but he was definitely proud. We also went to see Tommy together. We went to see the movie Tommy, and we went, that was, the soundtrack was lots and lots of art in the soundtrack. So he got a kick out of it, that, his invention was so infused into popular culture at this point. So,
I spent hours trying to recreate the beginning to the Who's Won't Get Fooled Again, which I'm trying to remember now what the exact signal path was, but it was going through a sample and hold filter, wasn't it, on the 2500, if I recall. And eventually someone, a man much more clever than me, created a patch on one of my synthesizers where you just literally you hold the keys and it does all of that for you. And that was it. I was Pete Townsend. I was doing this stuff, and it sounded really cool. And he also did the Bubba O'Reilly, which obviously wasn't. It was a Lowry organ, wasn't it? Stuck on the marimba repeat or something. I did write the history down somewhere, but yeah, I mean, it's just all these little things that are all traced back to your father's work. It's just, I love those little nuggets, those little points of connection. They're just fantastic.
You know, my friend John, whose synthesizer this 2600 is, he did some of that work back in the 70s where studios or whatever would call him in to do sound effects for things. And you know, he talked about even doing some like sci-fi robot voices, like with the ring modulator, and you know, creating, you know, and also demonstrating probably late 70s, doing demonstrations about how to do like the R2D2 sound after Star Wars had come out, but he did it for like radio or TV programs, which was kind of fascinating.
Cool.
Oh, there was the 2500 was used in Logan's Run as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and there's a gentleman that I never met him in person because, of course, that is all last year, but he figured out how the sound was made for does anyone know what the name of the alien something
Oh, in Battlestar Galactica, wasn't it? That
Oh,
was
Cylons.
yeah.
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 The Cylons, yeah. We've actually, I think I had a video lined up somewhere, but yeah, there's a video on YouTube where he got in touch with the guy who did it, and then kind of figured it all out. But yeah, it's fascinating stuff. Fascinating.
That's some of the most fun parts of sci-fi. We've been going through a lot of vintage sci-fi, and especially when it's, you know, late 60s or, you know, up to maybe the mid 80s or so. You know, hearing the soundtracks, and I'm going and Googling like, hey, what was used on this? This is really interesting.
Yeah.
And then that recent one as well, Stranger Things.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
They use ARPs on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was so thrilled to find that out. That was really
Was he aware of the ARP usage in the Doctor Who theme?
I never
Because as a sci-fi fan, I bet he would have been quite proud of that as well. Even though it's only a little British series, like, you know.
I had a boyfriend who was really into Doctor Who, and he didn't know this, and he was also really into a lot of prog rock and stuff like that. I don't know if there's a connection there, but he introduced me to
There is here.
he introduced me to a lot of that music that I hadn't known before.
Yeah, that's one of the great things about the Doctor Who theme is it's constantly reinvented for like each generation of Doctor. So, you know, the early stuff was you know, Delia Derbyshire and her tapes and stuff, and then it moved into ARPs, and then it moved to CS80s, and then it moved to other things. And so, you know, every generation of electronic music fan can claim, you know, that they love electronic music in Doctor Who because it's that, you know, that was their era.
It's the ARP one that resonates with me.
Yes.
Pardon pun.
He's here all week. Stay for the fish. Shall we? Let's give Dina a little break from all the grilling because it's been almost an hour. So let's just play a couple of videos with, of course, a very common theme. Let's have a look at 50 years of ARP at the AES. This is it's a nice little video. This would it be if you press play? There we go. So I was going to ask where that music came from. And thankfully, at the end, it told me. It's the wonderful Lisa Belladonna. Let's that delightful segue into another video that I have lined up here, where Lisa plays you something very special. This was back in September of last year, and hopefully I've queued this up correctly. So fingers crossed. Let's have a listen to this.
This is for you.
I really don't want to stop this, but I'm going to, because otherwise we could be here all night watching and listening to that. That's the remarkable Lisa Belladonna, who you can go and watch that on the Alan R. Pearlman Foundation YouTube page. Was back from September of last year. It might be worth mentioning that we are going to be joined by the very one and only Lisa Belladonna on April the 9th.
Oh, great.
So Lisa is going to be joining us April 9th, and we cannot wait to have her on the show and talk about all things ARP and Moog and synthesis and her wonderful style. So that's a big announcement for us, Lisa, April the 9th. Watch this space. Shall we talk about a couple of news items here again, just so that Dina can just have get her voice back and relax a little. Of course, Dina, if you feel like chipping in, by all means, put your hand up and say. So there have been just a handful of news items, or newsworthy items, shall I say, over the last week since we spoke last. One of which we covered very briefly because it was just a teaser, but now the teaser is a real thing, and this is the news that Cherry Audio have brought out their 8 voice, which is their version of the Oberheim 8 voice, and it seems like 8 voices are like number 52 buses, nothing for ages, and then 2 come along at once. But the main difference between this and the GeForce software Oberheim 8 voice is that this one is only $29, and it's also compatible on Windows machines, which of course the GeForce one isn't at present. I've not downloaded this because I've restrained myself. Let's have a little listen, shall we, to what it sounds like.
Okay, none of us can hear it.
Yeah, I didn't know Chris may know.
I was waiting for the chat to come back, but
Yeah, so that's a pretty newsworthy price there, $29. Are we getting into Oberheim 8 voice wars here, or is this just a coincidence? Well, obviously, Cherry Audio had the they certainly had an SEM module in their voltage modular rack. I don't know if there was an 8-voice version of that. I've not bought this because I've already got OBE, and I just really, I mean, I know this is only like $29, but I just don't see the point of cluttering up my hard drive any further. But Cryss, you did buy this. You've been making some patches on it. What are your first? Because again, you're an OBE owner as well, so you can directly compare the two.
Yeah, the SEM and that sound is one of my favorites, and so I wasn't planning to buy it, but since the SEM is such a great sound, I said, well, it's cheap. You can find it around, I think, $24 or so if you search around. So I ended up picking it up, and as far as Cherry Audio goes, I've been probably a little more critical of them. I thought that this is their best synthesizer to date, and felt like it was worth the price. The filter to me sounds a little bit generic. It doesn't really sound like it kind of sounds like they put a 24 decibel filter where there should be 12. A little bit generic, a little bit dark in the top end, whereas the OBE has just that nice wispy. Now, I'll say to the credit of both the 8-voice and OBE, they have a little more give to them than some of the other SEM emulations. The Arturia is okay. I thought the Oberhausen sounded really cold and just really did not do it for me. I didn't feel like it sounded like an SEM at all. I know a lot of people love it. So glad to see that there's options. I mean, OBE, the G-Force is still the king. It's such an amazing synth. However, for under $30, man, this is pretty good. Yeah,
and this kind of harks back to what you said when we kind of spoke about the teasing. We kind of guessed this is what it was, and you said that the bottom line is we've got choices, and for somebody who can't maybe justify 150 to 200 pounds, dollars, euros, whatever the currency exchange rate is, for the OBE, which is not, in the terms, the grand scheme of things, is not a huge amount for a quality plugin. To come in at this price point with all of their instruments, they come in at this price point. This is great to have. You have an option now, and of course, there's the bit that it keeps the Windows users happy for the time being. Anyway, certainly if I was a Windows user, I'd go for this, and then I wouldn't begrudge buying the OBE later down the line, because I've not spent much on this one. But Ben, have you played with this one at all?
I've not actually played with it yet, but I am going to download at least a demo of it so I can try it out. Because like Cryss, I'm a big fan of this sound, and I love the OBE. It's not been out very long at all, but it's in like my most selected plugins already. It's just like, oh yeah, I need something there to do that. I reckon the OBE can do that, and it's just fitting in. It sounds authentic. It's rich sounding. You can hear it at the outro music that you did, Rob.
Yes,
it sounds so
great instrument. Shame about the player.
It's brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I think options are necessary. People need. You've got the great OBE, but somebody else might want four plugins for that amount of money or whatever.
Yeah.
And they're getting a fairly, from what I can gather and from what Cryss has said, a fairly decent emulation of it.
Yeah.
The filter, the resonance issue on the filters, there's something going on there, but it's not rendering it unusable. It's still a very, very usable virtual synth at a superb price.
Yeah, absolutely.
29.
I wonder if this. Oh no, go ahead, Cryss. Go ahead.
And just two more things about that versus OBE. One thing that's nice about OBE is it has an offset mode, so that if you make adjustments to one of the SEMs, it'll not lock everything to that value, but it'll adjust it when you make an adjustment by a certain voltage. It'll just do offsets on there, which is really nice in sound designing versus the Cherry Audio version. But one thing I got to give credit for both GeForce and Cherry Audio is that I'm exceptionally critical of factory presets because they're often made, I think, in such a rush. They don't end up really capturing the soul of an instrument, and so you usually either make your own or buy sound sets for these synthesizers where somebody's given it a little bit more time. But I have to say that both of these synthesizers have come with very usable sounds in them, and that's another thing too, because a lot of time there's a temptation to make them where you're at your music store and you press a button in it and it just plays everything once, but you're like, how would I ever fit that crazy sound into a song? But both of these had some very usable where you could just pull up the preset and plug it in, and it would work really well. Sorry,
Yeah.
Go ahead, Robbie.
Well, I was going to say, we're talking about software versions of a classic analog synthesizer, and of course we've got Dina here in the room, so I've got to ask. There are a number of software emulations as well as some hardware emulations of ARP instruments. From your point of view, what do you think of these things?
Oh, it's such a loaded question.
Yeah, that's true.
Wow, can of worms.
So, I was in the beginning skeptical of the first software version that I knew about until I had a demo, and this was Jim Hines' work, and I thought it was amazing. And there's a really great picture of my dad using it. He was thrilled to pieces.
That was the Time Warp, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was the Time Warp. And he actually worked with Jim Hines, and they got Jim Mitchmerheisen, who was integral of making the 2600 manual.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of warmed up to it. It was very cool.
Yeah.
And there was this sort of big black hole of time where didn't really keep up with what was going on. So I had heard vaguely of Arturia, and then as the foundation started to become cohesive, and I started to get a fast track immersion into the synth industry world, I got to play with it, and I really enjoyed the interface, using the interface.
Mm-hmm.
I love the Oddity. I think the Oddity is great.
Yeah, that's good fun.
It's great fun. And I've had some fun playing with Cherry Audio as well. Here's the thing. I think anyone who's emulating these instruments is doing so with the idea of similar ideas to what the foundation has, and that is trying to make these instruments available in any way possible. So there's a huge part of me that just loves any of them because it's perpetuating this tool and making it live in perpetuity. So there is a sort of heartwarming feeling about it. I am not enough of a technician to be able to be an accurate judge on which is the best and which is not. And I leave it to the people that use these instruments day in and day out. And I'm not saying that I don't have ears and can't discern between differences and all, but I would be misrepresenting myself if I was to say one is superior over the other at this point. Yeah. One of the things that did throw me a little bit was that the interfaces were not an accurate depiction of what we have here. And so, wait a minute, this is missing, and so I'm trying to figure out, what is substituted, why, and, I guess there's obvious reasons that a virtual version would not need a thing that the actual analog device would. As far as you were just talking about the virtual ones, right?
Anything, but yeah, I mean, if you've ever considered a career in the diplomatic service, you'd pass with flying colours. It's fantastic. But if you want to say something, feel free.
Fine. I'll wax poetic in another direction if you want.
No, if you want to get something off your chest, feel free. If not, we can move on. It's up to you.
I haven't heard all of the hardware versions of my father's or the people that have made different versions of my father's. So I can't accurately make a judgment for all of them. The Korg ones feel good. They look good. They sound good. One of the things that kind of amuses me, and I know I'm going to get a lot of flack for this, but I do have to say that when people say, well, this doesn't sound like the 2600 that I have, and I said, well, what year is yours? Oh, 1974. Do you know what it sounded like in 1974?
Yeah. Can you remember?
And do two ARP 2600 sound the same? No.
No. You know, these instruments, they're like any instrument. They're made of real things.
Yeah.
And these things expand and contract with heat, with use. Things get stuck, things get cleaned, things change. You know, we have energy fields, you know, not to get too esoteric, but how you use it.
Yeah.
You know, all of those things are going to make a big difference in how it sounds. So what I've heard so far, I think the Korg instruments have sounded amazing. Yeah. I'm very, very interested in hearing the Antinous. Lisa Belladonna says they sound great. I think that their philosophy is lovely. There's a boutique size company that makes them by hand as well, and it's done with love and respect. And I've heard Tony play several times, you know, through video, and it sounds absolutely luscious. And I've also heard Lisa play them, and they sound really great as well. I haven't personally yet been able to play one. I cannot wait. So what I've heard sounds really good.
Cool. Yeah. Excellent. Very, very well said, I have to say. Very well said. Let's do another couple of little news topics, and then we'll get back to grilling Dina some more. And I do have to say, apologies for the Cherry audio thing, because apparently there was no audio. There was just Cherry. So I do apologise for that. You know, these things happen, you know. Let's just quickly talk about this one, because this was something I had some skin in this game a little while back and ended up kind of going retro. But this is the new 88 key Hammer Action keyboard from M Audio, the Hammer88 Pro, which looks like a really solid beast. 88 fully weighted keys with 16 pad controllers, faders, rotaries, everything you could want on there. It's got full aftertouch. It's lovely, you know, one of those kind of very trendy little LCD type screens in there as well. But yeah, some really nice features in there and a nice solid piece of gear. Nice to see 88 key controllers still being made. I mean, everyone seems to be going smaller and smaller, but there's nothing like a big old 88. I went the other way. I was going to buy new, and then I found an old KX88, and just that was it. I was sold. But you know, guys, what do you think about you know, there's a nice new 88 key controller with things like smart chord and smart scaling and arpeggiators built in, and presets for doors? I mean, is there still a market for the 88s in this day and age?
I'd say there was for me. You know, I've not I've only got like 5 octave maximum keyboards now. I used to have the Platinum, what was it, the G8. Used to be my main controller, and then because of the smaller studio, I had to get rid of that because it literally wouldn't fit in there. And so now I haven't got anything to like kind of set yourself a bit free with. You know, the piano keyboard is brilliant for just
it's just range, isn't it?
Yeah, but it just invites you to you know tinkle.
Yeah, it does. No, it's true.
It does.
It's true.
And that range is really good to play. So I think that I would be in the market, depending on the price. I would be in the market for something like this, but I also like the way that like Native Instruments and Arturia have got that very tight software integration. I know that this is DAW compatible, but it's a different thing, isn't it? You know, like where it's actually built to work with the software, and I think I'd be tempted to go with that a little bit more over just a generic controller.
Yeah,
as it
and
were.
in terms of hammer action, obviously it's a different thing, and I didn't realise quite how different and quite how much I actually took to it and enjoyed it compared to a traditional synth action, be it standard synth or semi-weighted. It does invite more expression, which I think in synthesis is very important as well. And I've really taken to it. In fact, so much so that when I play anything now that isn't hammer action, which is virtually everything in this studio bar the KX, it just feels less, just less. Cryss, do you possess a weighted keyboard? Do you have a preference in that regard?
I have had an 88 key weighted before, and I didn't use it that much, and they do take up a little more room, so I had ended up moving on it. I'm definitely more on the synth action. The keyboard on the OB6 and the Model 8X are my favorite.
Yeah.
This is semi-weighted on the Moog 1, which I like. It feels really good. In fact, when you make more like electric piano type sounds, that extra weight and that kind of bounce that it has, you can see why people would like that. Most of the time, I prefer the action of the, what is it, the Fatar TP8S, I think, or
TP9S, isn't it, on the
or 9, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that keyboard to me is perfect, and with the Modal Cobalt, I've got the 61 key version, and it fits so well in a crowded space. It's so small, and I know with some of these 88 key controllers, like the one that we just showed, it's not taking up too much room. I mean, with 88 keys, you're limited. You have so much room it's going to take up this way, but the fact that they don't take up a lot of room depth-wise means you can get them onto a desk pretty easy.
Yeah, especially if they're not too heavy, which unfortunately some of them are. This, as you can see, has taken up a huge amount of space in my room, much to the rest of my family, because they have to squeeze in and around it. I have to kind of shoehorn myself in here every day, and they don't come out until late. But there is just such a benefit from it. Dina, you play the piano. You're a keyboard player. You've got synthesizers behind you, but you clearly play a piano. I've seen you sat at it. Do you have a preference
To
keyboard style? Whether it's a synthesizer action or a weighted kind of thing.
I prefer a weighted keyboard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that because that's how you learnt?
I think that's how I learned, and I remember when I first had exposure to the synthesizers, how the keyboard felt strange to me, and it didn't. I was playing piano every day at that point, so it felt a little foreign, and having discussions about that with my dad.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So the M Audio Hammer88 Pro is available now. So I think it's around $579. I think that's UK. I'm not sure that's UK or US. Hang on. There's a buy now button. Let me tell you. I'll be able to give you a live price update. But it is available now, and comes in at a really nice price point. One thing that I wish it had, and I given that more people seem to be talking about it now, is polyphonic aftertouch. And it just seems like we're still fighting for manufacturers to come up with polyphonic aftertouch as standard.
Is there not one out? Is there not a controller that offers that?
I don't. There are, but there are not very many of them.
Yeah.
Like my CME X key has polyphonic aftertouch, and the Osmos, and I think there'll be some others. Usually
the Rolly stuff and that.
Kind of untraditional stuff. But I think that's when it comes to controllers in this year, it'd be like a kind of time to wait, because we have MIDI 2.0 and then this the push towards more polyphonic aftertouch, that it's kind of worth just waiting, because they're on the horizon.
Yeah, I'm just surprised that nobody's kind of daring to do it now. Because MPE MIDI 2.0 it's here and it's going to get more prevalent. So why not jump on the boat now? But there you go. I can't get you a price because it doesn't tell me a price. It just find dealers, and then I'm just going to get all sorts of different things. But I think it's around $579, $600 US or Great British pounds. So yeah, that's Hammer88 Pro from M Audio. Go and press the wrong button there. So let's see, what else have we got? Not much in the terms of news. Oh yeah, iZotope. Let's talk about iZotope quickly before we go back to Dina. So iZotope, I'm a big fan. I use RX8 in pretty much all of my voiceover work and podcast work because it's just brilliant. It's like Photoshop for audio. You can really, clean things up so nicely. And I have a problem with reverb here in the room, and I stick it on the signal chain, and it deals with it brilliantly. iZotope have now decided to go down the subscription route, and I can hear the boos coming across the internet because, everybody is it's very Marmite, as we say over here in the UK. You either love it or you hate it. There's very little in between. So now you can have two iZotope memberships. There's the Producers Club and there's the Music Production Suite Pro. And bizarrely, it's not simply a case of like the Producers Club gets you 7 of the 8 possible plugins and then the other one gives you all of them. They actually give you slightly different things. So you get Vocal Synth Pro with the Producers Club, and you get RX Pro with the Production Suite, but you can't have both. I just kind of think, well, what if I want RX Pro and I want Vocal Synth Pro? What's my option? And there isn't one apart from buying a perpetual license.
There should be a third option, shouldn't there? Where it's just everything.
Give me everything, sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe that's coming down the line. It just seems a little odd. But for $20 a month, you get the Producer, or for $25, you get the Production Suite Pro. And I guess with Production Suite Pro, you get Neutron, Ozone, Nectar, Visual Mixer Relay, Neoverb, and Tonal Balance Control, plus RX Pro, which is just brilliant. And then with the other one, you just swap out RX Pro for Vocal Synth Pro. You also get Berkeley Online production lessons, royalty-free sound packs, custom presets, and Melodyne 5 Essential is thrown in there. Now, this, of course, comes hot on the heels of their announcement last week of them partnering up with, or being put under the same umbrella as Native Instruments. So, is everything going subscription now, guys? Do you think?
I hope they still keep the option for the perpetual thing.
They are, as far as I'm aware, they are.
Because you're just going to end up where you get your wages the month, and there's like £5 left to last you because you spent it all.
Everything's going subscription, isn't it? It's crazy.
Yeah,
I think. I work for a company, and we used to sell perpetual licenses, or you just bought it and that was it, and free updates for life. Now everybody's going to a subscription model, and it's successful. That's the thing. I mean, we all sat there thinking, oh, we're going to lose business through this, but we're not. We're gaining more business, even more than we were before. So it does seem that consumers, certainly in many respects, they do like subscriptions. Yeah. But I do know people who just say, I'm not even going to touch Roland Cloud, or I'm not even going to touch Reason Pro or Reason whatever it's called, the subscription, Reason Plus. Don't want to touch it. It's perpetual licenses or nothing.
I think the less that you have, the more attractive a subscription service is. So if you have a very basic DAW and you go and you grab your Plugin Alliance subscription, all of a sudden it gives you access to pretty much everything, which may be useful because you got a year to figure out what you like, and after that year you buy a perpetual license for the stuff you want.
Yeah.
And I don't think there are too many people that are upset about subscriptions being added. It's just if it becomes either exclusively subscription, or and I think I believe I read something in regards to the iZotope thing where they had made a statement, and I should have looked this up and had a exact wording on it, so forgive me for that, but it was something along the lines that the latest features would only be available to the subscription service.
Yeah,
and if that's
that tends
something
to be
that happens, that's going to piss off a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. And it does seem to be that way now, that subscribe, you get the latest of everything. Don't subscribe, you're going to have to wait 6 months to a year at least. And so I guess it's just a fishing hook, isn't it? It's what they tried to reel you in on. I can't be out of date for 6 months or a year, so I've got to have the latest thing. So
do you think that the subscription, like, system like hinders development in the product, because they're always pushing for new features to make people upgrade to the next version. But if people are already locked into that upgrading cycle without any new features being added, is there less innovation? Do you know, RX-8 brought out a lot of improvements over RX-7, didn't it? Mm-hmm. But now it's just called RX Pro. There's going to be no RX-9 from what I can...
I think the Pro suffix is for subscription products. So all the subscription products will be called Pro.
Yeah, I just wonder if it's still going to drive forward with the same amount of innovation, or is it just going to be little refinements? Because that's what's happened with the Adobe stuff, say, for instance. There was always like massive new features coming out for that, and now it's just kind of plateaued with this. Oh yeah, we fixed that, or we made this selection process a little bit better. But they're not things that would make you go out and buy it if you'd never had it before.
Yeah. I think that's been a big complaint about Native Instruments as well. It's like, well, you've added stuff to make it look like there's more things to get in the subscription, but there's a lot of things that are not working or as they should, like Massive X. And you're like, well, there's all these reported things that have been problems with them, but you're not fixing them. So why do you keep adding instruments to this set when things aren't working as they should already?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we shall see. I guess these companies will live and die by their decisions, and at the moment it seems like they're doing pretty well. But iZotope now have this subscription option. You can go to iZotope.com.
So before we before I hand it over to Ben, let me hit a couple of our chat questions and just remind everybody, if you've got a question for Dina, please put it in the chat and tag Synth Network, Ben Simpson, or Synthient Sound, and we'll ask those questions. So I've got two here, and sorry, let me pull it up here. Simon asks, one of our buddies will be on the show next week. Could you ask Dina if the old factory in Massachusetts is still there, and if it is, do you know what it's being used for now?
So the answer is which one? There was 3.
Oh.
The first one where Tonus was in Kennett Street, the building is still there. I believe it's some sort of warehouse. I want to say for some sort of food service. I went there a year or so ago. Took a picture for Alex.
Mm-hmm.
Alex Ball. I don't know if he's here.
Yes.
And then the other one in Newton is also still there. It's right across the street from a storage unit that has some of my family stuff in it. It's right next. It's I don't know what it is. It's an office building that's still very much in use, and so that's still there as well. And as for Hartwell Avenue, I don't know. I did do a Google sort of Google World look-see to see, and there, it's an office park. But I haven't had any reason to go to Lexington, so I don't know for a fact what's there exactly. Yeah.
One other question. Martin Taylor asks, Dina, do you know if there were any instruments your father designed that haven't been released into the public?
Well, there is the Centaur. That was never released. There's some prototypes that are kicking around somewhere. That was in the realm of avatars and guitar synths. As far as ones that have never ever made it past the drawing room, I don't believe there is. I did find in his records some ideas in his files, I should say, some ideas of coming up with a new educational model.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
I am looking for schematics now. I am going to make a public statement, however, to say I'm not in the business of making synthesizers. So, as to whether or not there is a future with this, if I do find any more information, it remains to be seen. But he did have some ideas late in life about doing some purely educational art models.
Cool.
Very interesting.
Indeed. You mentioned Alex Ball, though. I just want to throw this in there because if nobody... is there anybody that's interested in synthesizers that hasn't seen Electromotive? So Electromotive was the film that Alex made. I just want to show this clip and hopefully I'll get the audio to work here. So we'll start off. This is like just an interesting little piece that starts off with David here. Let's play this.
By contrast, Alan Pearlman remained focused on the electronics rather than the rock stars and pop stars who were using them.
I did not meet any rock stars, and there's a story behind this, and that is one of my father's co-workers who had a kid around my age.
I think we heard the story, didn't we?
He had an autographed George Harrison something or other.
So it was
Girls
George that
of
you
14 or
met.
15 can be pretty demanding, and I said, how come I didn't get one of these? So next time he came back from Europe, I got a autographed 12-inch single. Pete Townsend autographed it for me to Dina. And when I asked my father, so what was he like? He says, well, I don't know. One of the salesmen went out and got it.
But what a great film. I mean, it's almost clocks in at just under 2 hours.
So packed with good stuff.
Yeah, it's just full of amazing, and of course Alex and his brilliant delivery and wonderful editing skills. And you can watch that both on Alex's channel, but of course you can also watch it on the Up Foundation's channel as well.
Yep, we have it. He gave us a copy.
Yeah, so
really great.
It's free to watch, and I think if you watch it, you should just make a little donation or a big donation. Or just a little one, whatever. So yeah, you can find that on the Alan R. Pearlman Foundation channel. You can also find it on Alex Ball's as well. Ben, have you got some questions?
Right, yeah, I have. First, I would like to ask Dina if you've got any idea what your dad imagined the use of the ARP synthesizers to be. Because I imagine like developers of instruments now, they've got history to look at, this works, this type of market wants something like this type of market wants something like this. But it was new territory. It was, and you said that he was he liked classical music and really liked the Wendy Carlos stuff when that was done. I wonder, like, what he made of, like, Kraftwerk and, and how he envisaged these sounds being used.
It's an interesting question. Originally, he thought that the synthesizer would be a learning tool and a way to learn about music. I mean, think about it. You can break down sounds by sound waves and pitch and amplitude, and the idea that a music student would be able to understand sound waves and how to put different variations together to come up with something that sounded like an oboe, that sounded like a string instrument, was his original intention. The soloist, not a lot of people know this unless you're, well, I'm sure most of you actually do know this. The soloist, before it was a pro soloist, actually was developed around the same time as the 2500. And it was meant to sit on top of a Hammond, an organ, as something for the organist to be able to, play with, two hands, one hand up. And I think that somehow the success of the 2500, but it was impossible to afford then, even though by today's standards, $5,000 for a 2500, I think we would. But the idea is to have something that was going to be more portable. David Friend phrased it really nicely. Is if universities could afford, 5,000, 10,000, whatever, how many thousand for a 2,500, then maybe musicians could afford a 2,600, a smaller version.
Yeah.
So he visualized that to be both more user-friendly and to open up the possibilities. I don't think he originally imagined that, Prince would be playing them, or Kraftwerk, or the myriad. I mean, the multitude of artists that integrated ARPs into their both touring and studio work.
Yeah.
So I don't know if he understood the breadth of usage, but I believe he was not isolated in thinking it just had to sound like classical music. Because remember, he liked Mort Subotnick, which would hardly be, considered a traditional classic. It was out there. And he actually enjoyed out there music. So I think there's a part of him that part of him came through in the machines, because obviously you can make these sounds that are not quite an oboe or quite a harpsichord and the fact that the possibilities of the palette got so expanded. I think that he would have really enjoyed hearing all the different sounds that came out that he wasn't exposed to. I think he really would have loved that.
Yeah. I think like the science fiction connection as well, because I wasn't really that interested in music personally, like, as a young teenager, whatever. But like when synthesizers kind of really, electronic music really took off in the early 80s, that was when it got my attention, because I like sci-fi, and it was like, oh wow, there's like a science fiction version of music now as well. That's
science fiction version of music.
Yeah, I'm gonna get into that.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So your own musical journey, was that influenced by what was like kind of lying around the house? Is that how you got into it? How did that begin for you?
It started off just liking what was popular, but also being brought up on classical. There's a place in my heart that will always love classical, and it's sort of my go-to for when I need to feel connected to my family. The other night I was feeling nostalgic, which is why I watched Immortal Beloved. So I wanted to, I needed to connect with them on that level. The story goes is they used to have to play Beethoven to get me to go to sleep when I was a little girl. But my tastes as a teenager, were pretty normal. I grew up in the 70s. So it was a huge shock to learn that Deep Purple used ARPs. Please don't laugh, everybody. I just didn't know. I love Deep Purple.
Yeah.
They were very popular right before I was old enough to actually buy albums on my own. Same with Elton John. Elton John became popular when I was barely in junior high school. And I liked all the popular music. What happened later was I kind of rebelled against popular music. So it was along the lines of what I said before, when I started becoming my own person, and I did not necessarily want to be associated with ARP as a teenager and as a young adult. How do you maintain your interest in music and rebel against a father who plays synthesizers well? The first band that I was in, I played keyboards. It was sort of a garage band.
But no ARPs.
No ARPs. As a matter of fact, I played a Roland.
Oh.
Yeah, piano. I don't remember. I know everybody wants to know. There's a picture of me somewhere online playing, with like go-go boots and things like that. Anyway, so,
I'd love to have seen your dad's face at the gig.
You know, he came to my gigs. He was that's the person he was. He came to my gigs like, well, I don't understand it, but I'm here to support you because I love you. You know.
Yeah. I wouldn't use that roller now.
So, oh no, he was fine with that. He was fine with it. He was fine. I believe he bought it for me
All right. Yeah.
because I asked him for an ARP. There was nothing appropriate for what I was playing at the time. So then I really had to rebel. That wasn't rebellious enough. So I played bass, and I used to play a Gibson hollow body. I had an Ampeg amp with like 4 12-inch speakers. It was bigger than I was. My band hated me because ultimately they ended up having to help me carry the damn thing. And I was playing sort of punk, rockabilly, 3-chord rock, very, I loved it. I loved underground music. I was really into anything underground, and the great unsigned or alternative independent labels. I was really all about that for many, many years. And there's a part of me that's still there. I really love. Well, it's one of the things I love about Bandcamp, for instance. That you can start a Bandcamp account, and you don't have to be signed by a major label to have your stuff on Bandcamp and to become popular just by virtue of, the fact that your music is interesting to someone and evokes an emotional response. And I think that's fantastic, and it really aligns with those older sensibilities. I listen to just about everything. It depends on the mood. Like I said, classical brings me into a connection with my family. I love Latin music. I love dancing. That's one of the things that's so heartbreaking about this right now. I used to go salsa dancing, and typically you salsa dance with another person. We dance upstairs at home. I love old punk rock. My heart's there. It is represents when I was, like I said, becoming my own person, and I think it was actually healthy that I rebelled against the ARP world for a while, and that I came back to it from a genuine place rather than saying, well, this is who you are, you have to like it.
Yeah, but punk kind of forms the perfect soundtrack for that. For you, doesn't it? It's like rebellious music. You were feeling rebellious, and then you've got like the new wave movement that came after it that kind of brings the synthesizers into that sound as well. It's like it's running parallel with yourself there and all. I like that. Yeah,
because punk was really a great musical enema, wasn't it? And it's a horrible kind of image, but it cleared the canvas, didn't it? And people started doing punk music, i.e. DIY music, but now they're doing it with electronics and not guitars so much, and that was just that great kind of that great cleansing moment.
So you said you moved from keyboards to bass. Did you go back again? Was that it then? Was you just a bass player from that point onwards? Or?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say I had an illustrious career as a giggy musician. I was in a couple of bands, and there's some old recordings and lots of gigs in the Boston area and things like that. And when I moved to New York City, it probably lasted about 5 more years before I said that it's really hard to be a giggy musician in New York City. Anyone who, I mean, you have to rent the space. It's not like, most of us, if we can have a basement or a garage, but you don't have that in New York City. You have to rent a space, and then you have to take the stuff in the cab, and it becomes hundreds of dollars to rehearse, and it's just really challenging. And I think at that point I said I have to devote myself to my career. I love music; it's a part of me, but at this point I'm not going to be doing it professionally.
Yeah.
What did end up happening, however, is I remained with one foot always in the music business, because since so many of my friends were musicians, I ended up doing their band photos and designing their CD covers, because I'm a graphic designer and web designer by trade.
Right.
So, even right now, I'm supposed to be designing a cover for my partner's band. He's waiting for me to do that.
He probably hates me right now because I've been bugging you for the last couple of weeks.
Talking to these blokes. Why aren't you working on
Hey, we need a website doing, don't we, Ben?
Yeah, we do.
So I had one foot in the door. I never completely left. It's always been one part of how I've made money, one part of how I've spent my time. I would always play piano whenever I was at home. I'm a doodler and a noodler, and I'll pull out the old torn up Bach books and play some stuff like that, or fool around with some scales and keys and all. Again, I'm not talented like you are, but I have fun with it. I have a lot of...
I wouldn't use talented, maybe.
I was going to
certainly
say,
for myself. I can only speak for myself.
I'm speaking for me as well. I think Cryss is probably the talented one here.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Just going to throw this one in from the chat room. And I'm sure you get asked this question all the time. But what's your favourite harp instrument? Oh, she's frozen. No, Dina, stop. Oh, is it? It is just. Oh.
It must be the Avatar.
It must be. Yeah, it must be. Let's. We'll have to hope she comes back. That's a shame.
While we're waiting, do we have another video we could put up?
Yeah, let's do something from here. We talked about the ARP influence with the Cylons, and I'm just trying to find, where is it? Is it this one? Let's see. I think it might be this one. Yes, it is. How about this? Hopefully we won't get a copyright strike. You can hear that, right? Yeah.
According to my source, the synthesizer used to create the tone that is the basis of the Cylon voice was an ARP 2500. It was manufactured from 1970 until 1981, with only 100 units being produced, and it's estimated that there's about 50 units left in the world fully functional. One of the main tone generators or oscillators of the ARP 2500 was and is very unique. The ARP 2500 oscillator allows you to mix and combine up to 5 different waveforms in their positive and negative shape, as well as pulse width modulation. This allows the user to create an almost unlimited variety of sounds, which in my opinion is why the Cylon voice has never really been duplicated, because the chance of somebody owning this unique synthesizer as well as an EMS 1000, 2000, or 3000 vocoder and knowing what to look for is very small. Based upon my experimentation with the real ARP 2500 that I visited for a day, as well as working with this virtual software clone, in my opinion, the tone used to generate the Cylon voice is a combination of 2 or 3 different oscillators. On a side note, the synthesizer used to make the Cylon voice belonged to legendary film composer Jerry Goldsmith, and for whatever reason, the synth was present at Universal Studios at that time. I assume he was working on a soundtrack, but by 1980, for the series Galactica 1980, the oscillators had been backed up to a tape reel for consistency. Now, it's possible that Jerry Goldsmith just needed to take his synthesizer home with him, but it's very important to point out that on the early analog modular synthesizers, the oscillator pitch was often unstable due to the nature of the electronic circuit and being affected by temperature and other reasons.
So this is a really fascinating insight into how a synthesizer is used to not just make music, but to make sound effects. And this video is on the Alan R. Pearlman Foundation if you want to watch it even more. It's about just over 5 minutes long, but it's Joe Granberg with the help of Vince Pupillo and Drew Rayson from the EMEAPP, which is this fantastic kind of electronic music museum. It's just a really, really interesting piece of history there. Sorry.
Did I understand that from that video that not a 2500, but the 2500 that was used on Cylons was also the 2500 used in Close Encounters?
I think they're kind of alluding to the fact that there was something there, and so and Goldsmith, and they mentioned Logan's Run. Dina's back in the room. You had a power cut, I hear.
Yeah, we're not quite sure what happened. We definitely paid the bill. It's nothing like that. I think they're doing construction on our street, and I think something like that happened.
But you've reconnected using a mobile device. Thank you
using
so much.
I could go like this.
Oh, that fits in there. Oh, look at that. Well, we shan't keep you too much longer, but yeah, I mean, fantastic. Thank you for coming back to us. You just kind of froze mid smile, and I thought you were thinking, and then I thought, no, that's taking far too long, and then we realised that you'd gone. Ben, have you got any more questions you want to put to Dina?
Well, it's thrown me that power cut, you know.
Not as much as it threw Dina.
Yeah. Oh, I wanted to ask about the archives. I love the name, by the way. It's just genius. But when you say you're digitizing it all, is that going to be made available online so we can all?
Well, yeah. So what we're going to have is there's going to be 2 levels. I mean, obviously, a lot of stuff can already be obtained if someone is doing research.
Yeah. Right, yeah.
So, we've had a lot of help from retro synth ads. Richard Martin has been really wonderful. Lee Keeley, Brian Kehoe, all these people have been really, Mary Locke have really been instrumental in getting me materials. But I mean, so many of you, it's almost impossible to name all the people that have sent me things or found images for me. So we're going to have sort of an entry level or just a gateway for people to be able to see these things. If people want high res, that will come with a membership, because we'll eventually have a membership level as well for the archives. And then, like I said, we had initially thought we would work with Berkeley. I'm hoping that Berkeley or Worcester Polytech or one of the institutions that he either attended or was associated with would be, willing and able to keep an archive of his things. Yeah.
So before you disappeared, and I'm frightened to ask you the question again in case it was the question that prompted the power cut, but Renzo in the chat room did ask this question, which I said, I'm sure you get asked all the time. That's the wrong thing. Let's put the right thing up on the screen. What is your favourite ARP instrument? Which I guess is like asking someone which one of your children is your favourite.
Right.
But do you have a favourite, an ARP, something like that?
Oh. My favorite is probably the first, the 2500. The sounds that come out are just magical. There's so many possibilities, and it's interesting. I was having a conversation actually today with Phil Scirocco, who is an amazing technician, restorer, artist in restoration. Actually, he's worked on Pete's stuff, and he's worked on a lot of well-known artist instruments, about how the actual 2500 was pretty well made, and they're especially as towards the end of the life of the company, that they were made and very strong and seem to have held out pretty well. So it's somewhat elusive. It's sort of like that, maybe it seems more desirable because I'm not able to get one for the foundation or whatnot. But I think the sound of it is really magical, and there's nothing that looks quite like it. There's nothing that sounds quite like it. It is a world of possibilities. Lately, though, I've been sort of in love with the Omni.
Yeah.
I love the sound, the sort of rich sounds, and I listen to this and go, "That's an Omni. That's an Omni. I know that's an Omni."
Sorry, a follow-up question to that was asked by Synth Addict earlier in the chat. Any idea what synth was your dad's favorite, or what he was most proud of?
I think he was most proud of the 2600.
Wow.
But that one certainly reached a lot of people, and I'm gonna say it like it really impacted music and musicians a lot.
Kind of the definitive ARP. I think it's the one that most people know about.
Yeah.
people like us, we know about pretty much all of them, I guess.
It's kind of what you picture when you think of an ARP, isn't it?
It's the definitive.
Yeah.
I think he identifies more with that than the others too. All of them had design teams, 2500 and 2600 included. But as far as the amount of energy and time and resources and ideas and designing and going underneath the hood, this is the one that I think was most personal to him.
Mm-hmm. There's another question from the chat room, but I'm going to kind of rephrase it slightly. So, first of all, is there any connection between yourself as the foundation and Korg doing these recreations? Do you have, is there licenses or permissions to use logos and things, or is it a completely independent thing?
Our association with Korg is they're friends of the foundation. Mm-hmm. They had initially spoken to my dad when they were going to reissue the Odyssey, so they were in touch with him early on, which that in and of itself kind of made it okay. Mm-hmm. He chose not to go through the project. He was not feeling so well in those years, and then he got sick. So David Friend ended up working on that project.
Yeah.
I reached out to Korg after my father passed because I wanted to know if I could use the logo.
Okay.
And they were just really, really kind and transparent with me. And yes, I can use the logo. We do not have any kind of agreement. We are not making. We're not. No one is getting any kind of. It's not a business.
No, it's mutual respect, isn't it? I guess
it's mutual respect. They have donated to the foundation in a number of ways. They have definitely made donations, and again, in full transparency, they've I definitely been a contributor to our being able to start our journey.
Yeah, and that's great to hear. That really is. Yeah. And it's respectful, I guess, of your father's legacy as well, which I think companies like Korg, Roland, they all piggybacked what your father and people like Bob Moog did. They started the ball rolling. The Japanese took it and ran with it in their direction, and the American synthesis methods and went off inside the other direction. And we're all the better for it. We're all richer for it.
There's a lot of warm feelings with the all of the older pioneers. I've had lovely conversations with Tom Oberheim. I met Dave Smith, and they were everyone had a mutual admiration society for each other. Yeah. My dad, I met Bob Moog when he came to our house, and Bob wrote this great article about my dad in one of those synthesizer books. I'm not sure if it was the Mark Vail one or another one. There was a lot of they were all trying to do the same thing. It's like passing the baton. So one person does something, and then the next person says, well, that's a great idea, maybe we could do it this way, and they take that, and so on and so on. So if you think of it as different folks from the same journey, and so I see Korg as one of several different companies that are continuing to pass on the baton.
Yeah, absolutely. Gents, have you got anything else you'd want to pose, Michelle?
We should probably ask
Dina,
a question that we had, and then also Jason Crouch asked earlier in the chat. As far as your needs for the foundation, we spoke a little bit like the 2500 is the big thing, that we would like to see get to you.
The elephant in the room.
Yeah. What are some of the other things that you'd be looking for in particular? I think you said you had a few 2600s, but you're looking for some specific pieces, I imagine.
Sure. We have an axe. Did I mention that? So I think it would be nice to have a few of the Omnis. Omnis were so popular, and you can do so much with them. So string ensemble, I think. I mean, such a great sound. I just love. It's like all over David Bowie stuff, and so some string ensembles I think as well. I have a wonderful donation of patch cord, patch cords. Chris Cardone, if you're there, hello, thank you. So we're pretty set with patch cords right now, but I can't imagine that one can't have too many patch cords, right? So
of course.
Yeah.
How could
we need there's a lot of little things that we need help with. The studio project is going to be the big one, and we will be doing some fundraising, looking for some grant money and the like, some sponsors, etc.
I was going to ask how can anybody watching this help out, and what can be done?
So right now we are, of course, donations in kind as far as instruments, but I know that's not practical or possible for many as well. So, any little bit counts. We're working on getting a store. A lot of people have been asking about T-shirts. We have a lot of T-shirts left over from our fundraising, and we're going to be creating a T-shirt, an online presence. I'm hoping to maybe get Amazon to distribute a little bit, because that way we can get them overseas in a more expeditious and cost-effective manner. A lot of this pays for the website, for when we have video, when we need to get video together. Yes, I put the initial website together, but it needs upkeep, maintenance, and it needs also hosting and all that kind of stuff, as you all know. We need actually to get the stuff scanned. There's only so many hours in a day that we can do this on a volunteer basis. So volunteering is really essential in an organization like this. So if people do have materials that they want to send high-res scans, large ones that could be printed out on a one-to-one basis from their originals, they can contact me and let me know, and we're happy to accept those as well. Yeah.
Cool. Excellent. Gentlemen, anything else before we round things up for the day?
Well, I'm thinking that we need to, at some point, plan to, first of all, because we live so far apart, that we spend so much time, the three of us, talking together that we've never been in person, or at least I haven't been in person with you guys, that we need to meet up. But of course, NAMM I'm always going to say, because it's out in my area, but I feel like we need to meet in between East Coast United States. We visit.
Yeah, we've got to go to Boston. Yeah,
we should do a road. We should do a road trip.
Asheville. Yeah.
We should do a road trip, a Pro Synth Network road trip, and film it. And we all fly into Boston.
Yes.
We kind of do the whole ARP thing, and then we jump in the car, and Dina guides us down to Asheville, and then we'll all meet up and have a party in the museum with Michelle. How cool will that be?
Then you can get me out at cells on way back.
Yeah. but absolutely. I mean, the thing is, we can't. It's so lovely to think about doing something like that at the moment, because we've been locked down for so long, and we're all going to feel really anxious about traveling. And most of us here. Chris, have you had a shot yet? Are you the odd one out?
Not yet. Yeah.
Because you're such a baby, aren't you? You're such a young thing, and it's just us old people, and lovely ladies that get it. So we should, absolutely. We ought to, even if it is at NAMM or something, we ought to do something.
Zipflex.
Yeah, or if you come over to Europe, Berlin is always great. We have Synthfest here in the UK. Oh, so so many options.
We just need to find an airline pilot that'll smuggle all of those.
Yeah, I wonder who could do that and maybe get us discounted tickets. Captain Alexander.
That's going to be essential, the discounted tickets, unless I won't be going.
let me just note this a question for next week's guest, Mr. Alexander. Cheap flight tickets. I bet he's not even in the chat room anyway. Right, okay, so I think we'll wrap it up there. Dina, thank you. I mean, firstly, thank you for agreeing to come on. Secondly, thank you for your perseverance in coming back after the power cut. But it's amazing that we're so honoured to have you on here. And if there's anything that we can do to spread the word, you only have to ask, and we will do that for you. It's been an absolute joy to have you on. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been lovely.
If you want to find out more about Dina's work, then you can go to the website, which is just here, the Alan R. Pearlman Foundation. It's alanrpearlmanfoundation.org. You can donate there financially, and of course Dina's got her contact details there. If you do so happen to find an ARP in your basement or your neighbour's basement maybe, and they're looking for a nice home for it, then you can do so over at that website there, and we'll make sure that we put the links to I think there might actually already be that underneath in the description, so where you can find lots more information about the foundation. Once again, Dina, thank you ever so much for joining us. Sorry, Cryss, did you want to? Anybody else want to say something before No, okay.
Just saying thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much.
So just to remind our viewers, we've got some great guests coming up over the next few weeks. We are keeping that ball rolling. So next week we've got kind of like our monthly visit with Simon Alexander and his Infinite Synth Cave, which I'm sure he must have some ARPs in there. I'll have to ask him. I can't remember. There's so many synthesizers in there. But Simon will be joining us, traffic permitting, on March 26th. And then after that, we've already mentioned that we've got the wonderful Lisa Belladonna joining us on April 9th. So please do join us for that. That's super exciting. And we've also, coming up in April, we've got people like Philip Taysom from Modal Electronics and the delightful Matt Baxley or Moot Booksley, who's just the amazing keyboard chops. And this guy, I cannot wait to...
And an art player himself.
Indeed, yeah. Cannot wait to get him on. He's such a dude. And we've been kind of like friends and bouncing messages and emails for some while now. And I cannot wait to speak to him in person, so to speak. So yeah, they're all coming up in April, and we've got more stuff. I mean, we're constantly planning. Even just the other day, we're planning another special show, because you might remember Sunday just gone, we did this whole kind of special with Dr. Manny Fernandez talking about the new Codem OS and FM. We've got something similar coming up. I won't say what, but it's kind of technology based, where we get to meet the makers and the inventors of something that's really cool. So we'll bring you more details about that as and when we have them. So make sure you, if you're on social media, that you join us at Twitter, Instagram, and of course our Facebook page. And of course, most of us should know that we're on YouTube, because that's probably where you are at the moment. All of the tags there are at Pro Synth Network, and we'll be back same time, same place next week, Friday. And of course, next week again, if you are in the United States or Canada, I don't know whether South America does this kind of weird, going to summertime 2 weeks before everyone else. But if that is your thing, then be aware that we in the UK, because we're Greenwich Mean Time, so everything comes out of us anyway. We're still in good old GMT next week, so there will be that time shift difference. So I think it just makes the show an hour later in your day. And then the following week we'll all be realigned again until October, but it'll be spring officially. Is it this weekend? The spring, is it the vernal equinox? I think this weekend. Yeah. So yeah, I love that, because now we're tilting in the right direction. Yes, everything's coming into alignment. Right. So that's it. Finally, if you want to donate to us to keep us on the air, you can do that at Cutley /PSN-donate. That's all the plugs now. Thank you, guys. And, of course, once again, thank you, Dina. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on. I should be rewatching this myself probably tomorrow. But until next week, take care, everyone. Stay safe, stay germ-free, and we'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.